The storm had been raging for hours when Savannah Park heard footsteps crunching through the snow toward her house. At 27, she had lived alone since finishing her master's degree in social work, and unexpected visitors during winter storms usually meant someone was in serious trouble. She grabbed the baseball bat she kept by the door and stepped onto her porch, pulling her beige cable-knit sweater tighter against the bitter wind. Snowflakes swirled in the glow of her porch light, and through the white curtain of falling snow, she could see a man approaching with his hands raised peacefully. "I am sorry to disturb you," he called out, his voice carrying over the wind. "My car broke down about a mile from here, and my phone has no signal. I was wondering if I could use your garage to wait out the storm until morning." Savannah studied the stranger in the dim light. He appeared to be in his early 30s, with dark hair dampened by snow and wearing a grey coat that looked expensive despite being soaked through. Something about his manner suggested education and refinement, which made his request for shelter seem incongruous with his appearance. "Where were you driving to at this hour in a storm?" Savannah asked, keeping the bat visible but not threatening. "I was returning from a meeting about 40 miles north," the man replied. "A community center that applied for funding from our foundation. The meeting ran late, and I underestimated how quickly this weather would deteriorate." "Foundation?" Savannah repeated, intrigued despite her caution. "I work in philanthropic development," he explained. "We evaluate organizations that request grants for social services. Tonight I was meeting with people who run a program for homeless veterans." Savannah felt her defensive posture soften slightly. As a social worker, she understood the importance of that kind of work, and his specific knowledge suggested he was telling the truth. "What is your name?" she asked. "Nicholas Crawford," he replied. "And I know how this looks, but I promise I am not here to cause any trouble. I just need somewhere warm to wait until I can get help with my car." Savannah made a decision that surprised her. "You can sleep in the garage, but I have rules about boundaries and safety." "Of course," Nicholas said, relief evident in his voice. "Thank you for your kindness." As Savannah led him to the detached garage and brought him blankets and hot coffee, she found herself curious about his work with the foundation he had mentioned. "What kind of organizations do you typically fund?" she asked as Nicholas settled into the makeshift sleeping area she had arranged. "We focus on direct service programs," Nicholas replied, wrapping his hands around the warm mug. "Homeless shelters, job training programs, community health clinics. Organizations that provide immediate help to people in crisis." "That must be rewarding work," Savannah said. "I am a social worker myself, so I understand how important private funding is for non-profits." Nicholas looked at her with new interest. "What kind of social work do you do?" "I run a small program that helps people transitioning out of homelessness find permanent housing and employment," Savannah explained. "We work with about 30 clients at a time, providing case management and support services." "That sounds like exactly the kind of program our foundation wants to support," Nicholas said thoughtfully. "How do you fund your operations?" "Grants, donations, and I supplement with my own savings when necessary," Savannah admitted. "It is not sustainable long-term, but the need is so great that I cannot bear to turn people away." Over the next hour, as the storm continued to rage outside, Savannah and Nicholas talked about the challenges facing social service organizations, the gap between available resources and community needs, and their shared frustration with bureaucratic barriers that prevented help from reaching people who needed it most. "You know," Nicholas said as their conversation continued, "I would love to learn more about your program. Would you be willing to show me your operation and discuss a potential partnership?" "You mean a grant application?" Savannah asked hopefully. "I mean a site visit to better understand your work," Nicholas replied carefully. "Sometimes the best organizations are the ones that operate quietly without much fanfare." The next morning, Nicholas arranged for a tow truck and thanked Savannah profusely for her hospitality. They exchanged contact information, and he promised to follow up about visiting her program. 2 weeks later, Nicholas arrived at Savannah's modest office space accompanied by a well-dressed woman carrying a briefcase and taking notes. "Savannah, I would like you to meet Jennifer Walsh, our foundation's program director," Nicholas said. "We are here to conduct a formal evaluation of your services." Over the next 3 hours, Nicholas and Jennifer toured Savannah's facilities, interviewed clients, and reviewed her program documentation with the thoroughness of experienced grant evaluators. "Your outcomes are impressive," Jennifer said as they concluded their visit. 85% housing retention rate and 70% employment placement rate are among the best we have seen. "Thank you," Savannah replied, though she felt nervous about the formal nature of their evaluation. "I hope our program meets your foundation's criteria." "It exceeds our criteria," Nicholas said with a smile. "Which is why I want to discuss a 5-year funding commitment that would allow you to expand your services and hire additional staff." Savannah felt her knees go weak. "How much funding are we talking about?" $2 million over 5 years, Jennifer replied, pulling documents from her briefcase, with the possibility of renewal based on continued outcomes. "I do not understand," Savannah said, looking between them. "Nicholas, you said you worked in philanthropic development, but you are talking like you make funding decisions." Nicholas exchanged a glance with Jennifer, then looked back at Savannah with an expression that mixed pride and slight embarrassment. "Savannah, I should have been more specific about my role," Nicholas said. "I do not just work for the Crawford Foundation. I am the Crawford Foundation. My family established it, and I serve as its president." "You are saying you personally control a foundation worth millions of dollars?" Savannah asked. "I am saying that the night you let a stranger sleep in your garage, you are helping someone whose job it is to identify people who embody the values our foundation wants to support," Nicholas replied. "Compassion, integrity, and commitment to serving others." Savannah stared at him as the implications of his revelations sank in. "Were you testing me that night?" "Not intentionally," Nicholas said honestly. "My car really did break down, and I genuinely needed help. But Savannah, the way you treated someone you thought was stranded and vulnerable told me everything I needed to know about your character. And now you want to fund my program because I gave you shelter during a storm?" Savannah asked. "I want to fund your program because you have spent 3 years using your own money to help people that larger organizations ignore," Nicholas corrected. "The fact that you also helped a stranger during a crisis just confirmed that your compassion extends beyond your professional obligations." 6 months later, as Savannah celebrated the opening of her expanded facility with clients, staff, and community supporters, she reflected on how one snowy night had transformed not just her program but her entire life. Nicholas had become not only her foundation's primary benefactor but also her closest partner in developing innovative approaches to ending homelessness. "Do you think you would have helped me if you had known who I was?" Nicholas asked as they watched formerly homeless clients receive certificates for completing job training programs. "I think I would have been more intimidated by your wealth than concerned about your welfare," Savannah admitted. "But Nicholas, I fell in love with someone who cared enough about social justice to spend his evening evaluating programs for homeless veterans. And I fell in love with someone who would risk her own safety to help a stranger and then spend her own savings to change people's lives," Nicholas replied. As they watched their clients celebrate their achievements, Savannah realized that sometimes the most important tests of our character happen when we think nobody important is watching. What matters is not who sees our kindness, but that we choose kindness even when we expect nothing in return.